Hey there, quilty friend. It's Carolina Moore, your favorite sewing and quilting YouTuber. And today we are going to make a disappearing 9-patch block. This is a really simple block for beginners to make. And once it's all put together, it actually looks so much more complicated than it really was to put together. So you ready? Let's get started. All right, so I'm going to start off with 3 fabrics for my 9-patch. I have a fabric that I think I'm going to end up using this one for my center, and then 2 outer fabrics. It's good to have some contrast between these 3 fabrics. So I'll show you 1, 2, 3. These 2 definitely have a ton of contrast. This one's darker, so there's a little bit of contrast, and they definitely all 3 go together. They're all from the same line. This is the Fresh Linen line by Katie O'Shea for Art Gallery Fabrics. So I'm going to start, for me, by cutting off 2 inches off this bottom edge. And I do that because I saved the selvages, and this has selvage edge here. So I'm just going to turn this around. There we go. 2 inches. And now I'm going to cut 5-inch squares. So you can do this with scrap 5-inch squares that you have. It does help. You'll see the pattern. So some contrast can help, but honestly, you could do this totally scrappy and it would also give you a really fun look. It would also be a fun controlled scrappy. So like, let's say you did this like red, white, and blue, and you controlled where the red, where the white, and where the blue go each time. So those kinds of things. And I went ahead and just pivoted my whole mat. It's easier to just go ahead and pivot the whole mat. Now these pieces are going to be my scrap, and I'm going to stack these up into 3 stacks based on the fabric. So 1 stack of each fabric, and then we're going to go ahead and lay out our block. Now we're not going to use all of these for our 1 block. In fact, this is more than enough to make 2 blocks if you are okay with rotating it out. You'll see. All right, so I have my 3 fabrics. I'm going to pick this one as my middle, and then this one as my sides. And then this one as my corner. Now all these fabrics are directional, but the way that they're all going to end up in the quilt will kind of shuffle them around. So don't necessarily worry about the directionality of this, because there's going to be some twisting. If you really have very directional fabrics that have to stay directional, they're not a good choice for this quilt block. Okay, we are going to sew these together. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 into 3 rows, and then we're going to press. So let's first sew our rows, and then we'll talk about press. We take 2 fabrics, put them right sides together, and bring them over to the sewing machine. I have a 1/4-inch presser foot on my machine, so I'm going to use that 1/4-inch foot to make sure that I use a good 1/4-inch seam allowance. And then you can stop here, cut off your thread, bring it over to where you have everything, and then add the next one. Or another option would be to chain piece, and I'll show you chain piecing with the other 2. We'll go ahead and sew this 3rd piece on. Again, keeping that 1/4-inch seam allowance. All right, for these, I'm going to chain piece. I'm going to take these two, put them right sides together. And I'm already kind of chain piecing because I'm leaving this piece foot. I haven't cut it off. Put this underneath the presser foot. And then sew. And then when I reach the end of the seam, I don't stop. What I'm actually going to do is grab this next set, put them together, bring them to the sewing machine, tuck it under. I want to make sure they don't overlap. I want a couple stitches between each, and then keep stitching. And that's called chain piecing. And then off the back of this, I can go ahead and cut these pieces off. And I can set them here on my layout to make sure that I have things right. And now I add this piece. I still have the bottom row attached to the bottom of the sewing machine. And if you have problems with like your thread getting sucked into your machine or your fabric getting sucked into your machine, you could use this, but I use this honestly as a just speed piecing method, taking one off the back, because then I'm not starting and stopping each time. I just go, adding each piece. And it's great for when you're doing lots of blocks at once as well. If you're a beginner, sometimes you end up getting a little mixed up as to which piece you're piecing, and you can make mistakes that way. But generally speaking, especially once you're a little more experienced, chain piecing is faster. Not to say that I don't ever make any mistakes, because I absolutely do. Okay, so I have my rows stitched, and now it's time to press. I'm going to move this mat out of the way so that I don't mess up the mat with the heat of the iron, and we're going to go ahead and press this. All right, I have my pressing mat. This is just a wool mat. I do not have it on top of my cutting mat, because if I were to put it on top of my cutting mat, the heat from my iron could actually go through this and warp the mat. And these mats are expensive, especially when you have to keep replacing them. Okay, with this top row, I'm actually going to press the seams out because that's towards the dark. For this middle row, I'm going to press them in, and for the outer row, I can press out. And pressing them in opposing directions means pressing these in opposing directions means that I can nest my seams in the next step, which is lovely. So this one was out, this one was in. So there are lots of different rules about pressing. Some people like to press the seam first to make the seam itself flat, and then press from the back. And then also press from the front. And people that are this particular about pressing will tell you that this is the right way to do it, and that's fine. I think the right way is the way that gets you the result you want. Some people also say that you have to press the iron down and then lift it back up, and only that is pressing. If you're moving the iron, then it's ironing. I'm also not that particular about it. I'll generally just press from the back unless I see a need to also press from the front. Sometimes I'll also flip it over and kind of give it a double check press from the front. But I don't set my seam first, which is what it's called when you have it flat like this and then press it. That's setting the seam before you press the seam. And you can try different ways for pressing and see which way works best for you, what you like, because quilting is a hobby, right? For most of us, it's not a vocation. It can be if you want, but generally it's a hobby. It's something we do for fun. And so pick the way that is fun and gets you the results that you want. All right, so we have our 3 rows sewn, and now we're going to put those rows together. So right sides together, and this is where you can see that I have this seam going in this direction and this seam going in this direction, which allows me, there's a little bump that happens so I can nest those seams together, and that's going to give me a hopefully perfect point, or at least a better chance at a perfect point by nesting those seams together. Okay. Now you can pin if you want. I'm not a big pinner. I nested those seams, and now I'm double checking these ones and nesting these as well. And because I'm just making one block, there's nothing to chain piece here. I don't have to press this seam yet, because you have to press a seam before another seam goes across it. And since I'm not doing another seam across it, I'm attaching this one to the bottom, and those are parallel seams. I don't yet have to press this one. So I'll put these right sides together, nest those seams just like I did on the last seam that we did. So nest those seams right here. Okay, before we move on to our next step, which is cutting, we have to press these two seams that we just did, which I guess we put our block the correct way. It's these two seams this way. It'll be easier for me to press like this, and I'm going to go ahead and press them out. Now you can press whichever way makes sense for you. If you're an open presser, you could also be pressing open this whole time. That's also just fine. You can't nest your seams when you press open though. So we're pressing these seams to the side. And when there's kind of rules about pressing towards the dark is good. Also pressing out as you build a block is good. And in this case, I'm doing both for the most part. This is a light, but it's about the same as this. So I'm pressing it from the back, and then I'm going to give it a good press from the front as well. These look so pretty together. All right. So we have made our block, our 9-patch block, and we're going to move the ironing surface out of the way because now it's time to make our 9-patch disappear. When we made this block, all of the squares were 5 inches. This center square will now be 4.5 because we took away 1/4 inch on each side. So this is 4.5. I'm going to measure 2.25 inches in from this, which will be halfway across this block. So let me grab my ruler. There we go, 2.25 inches. And I'm double, triple checking before I cut through, because once you cut through, you can't undo this step. This will be 4.5, yeah, 2.25. Okay. And we're gonna slice right through the middle of our block. And then, because I don't want to shift anything, I'm gonna actually pivot the whole mat and do the same thing going the other direction, 2.25 inches. You don't have to pivot your mat. You can probably walk around your table and that'll work as well. And now we have cut this block into 4 pieces. So watch as we make our 9-patch disappear. You ready? We're going to take this one, turn it 180 degrees. Take this one, turn it 180 degrees. See what a cool design that makes? And it's no longer a 9-patch. So our 9-patch has disappeared. Okay, we're going to sew this together the same way we did before. So we have, except we have 4 pieces instead of 2. So we're going to sew these 2 together and then these 2 together. And then we're going to sew them together to make the block. Let me obviously pressing in between. So let's take these two, put them right sides together. Now there's no seams to match up or line up this time, which makes that nice. We're still going to be good about our 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we're going to sew. Now you may have seen me flip this up for a second right here. That's because this seam right here is kind of pointing towards the machine. So that seam might like to flip on me. So we're going to pay attention to it. And depending on your machine, sometimes there's a lip right here where the parts of the machine meet. And that's a spot where it'll flip. And sometimes there's also a kind of a lip right before the presser foot. So you just watch those to make sure that the seam allowance doesn't get caught there and flip. And we can chain piece, grabbing our second row, our second set of 2, putting those right sides together. And there we go. All right, we're going to bring this over to our mat again and bring our iron back out. All right, I made my ironing surface a little smaller. Doesn't need to be quite as big. And we just need to make sure that we press these in opposite directions, which can be a little tricky because like which way is the right way to press these. You can press towards this way and you have one seam, press towards this way and you have a seam. So just pick a direction. That's fine. And then grab this one. I'm checking from the back to make sure that it is still making my design. And now I'm going to flip this the other direction because it's easier for me to press to the left. Okay. So let's flip these over. There we go. There's our disappearing 9-patch block. Now we're going to sew the top and bottom together. This time we do want to watch that center seam to make sure that all 4 corners line up nicely there. And because we pressed our seams in different directions, it should be really easy to nest it. And now we're going to press this block as well. I'm going to show you how to spin your seams, which is a great option here because it reduces the bulk in the center. Now, you can absolutely just press to the right or press to the left. Both are fine, but it gives you a little less bulk. If you look, this seam right here has been pressed up, and this seam right here has been pressed down. So if you continue that in a circle, you can actually pop this middle open. There we go. And it makes a cute little 4-patch right there in the middle when you do that. And then your bulk gets spread all the way around. That's nice when you're quilting this, whether you're doing it on a long arm with a free motion foot or doing it with a walking foot. This can be a big thump of a lump when you go to quilt it. So spinning those seams gives you less of that lump in the middle. And there we go. That's our disappearing 9-patch. Now you can make a bunch of these and put them together to make a quilt. If you're going to make it more scrappy, I would suggest making the 4 different ones in each block a little different. But it could be really interesting keeping the 4 in each, keeping each block together. It might be fun to keep this lime green throughout all your blocks, and so that continues to repeat. But there are so many ways to play with this. And it's such a simple, such a great beginner friendly block. So here you go. Here is your disappearing 9-patch block. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, what's keeping you? Make sure you subscribe to this channel. If you have any questions or comments, leave those below. And friends, I will see you right here real soon. Bye for now.